Tonight's Romantasy sleep story starts with a quiet rustle of autumn leaves against a cold glass window and a lonely woodland spirit who has forgotten how to ask for warmth. The air inside the greenhouse always smelled like damp earth, crushed thyme, and the quiet, heavy sweetness of things waiting to open. Elara let her thumb drift over the velvet curve of a star lily's bud, still closed tight against the coming dusk. Outside, the wind stirred the dry oak leaves at the village edge, but inside the glass walls, warmth pooled soft and golden from a small iron stove and 3 dozen terracotta pots, breathing green and alive around her. She always knew when the latch clicked, even before she looked up. Cal ducked beneath the low wooden frame, his moss-colored coat silvered at the cuffs from long walks through the wet woods. He carried the scent of pine and frost and old rain with him, a scent that never quite belonged indoors, and yet somehow fit the greenhouse like it had been waiting for him. "Good evening, Elara," he said, his low voice unhurried, like leaves settling after a breeze. "Cal," she smiled, wiping her earth-stained hands on her apron. "You're early tonight." "The shadows stretch long in the timber," he said, easing past a table of winter ferns. He drew a silver single coin from his pocket and set it gently on the workbench between them. "Do you have any heart blossoms tonight?" He glanced at the coin, then at him. His eyes were the pale, translucent green of shallow river water, and they always seemed to be holding something they could not quite say. For 3 weeks now, he had come at sunset, every evening, buying a single bloom, a golden orchid, a sprig of sweet briar, a midnight violet, and every evening lingering near her stove a while before disappearing back into the dark. "I do," she said, crossing to a ceramic pot in the corner, her voice warm with familiar teasing. "But you know how stubborn they are, Cal." The greenhouse had come down to her through 3 generations of women who understood old, patient magic that had nothing to do with sunlight or soil, and everything to do with truth. The flowers here bloomed only for those honest enough to know what they wanted. She carried the pot to the workbench. The stems were strong and green, winding upward, but the buds stayed closed like small, careful fists. "They won't open for coin," she said gently. "I'm paying for your time, your craft." He straightened, hands sinking into his pockets, though his gaze slipped just for a moment toward the cold kettle by the stove. "Cal," her voice softened further, "you don't have to keep buying flowers you don't know what to do with." Something in him went very still, the kind of stillness only someone who had been watching closely for weeks would notice. "I require them," he said, though the words came out thinner than before. What he hadn't told her, what she suspected, he hoped she would never guess, was that the woods beyond the village held old forgotten things, spirits of bark and river stone, who had wandered too near human roads and lost their way home. A spirit wearing mortal skin could only shed it and return to the deep green if someone gave them something freely. A true gift, no strings, no ledger, no death hazard. Spirits understood bargains. They understood curses and promises sealed in blood. But kindness with no price on it, that was a foreign, frightening thing. So Cal bought flowers he didn't want, just for an excuse to sit by her fire and listen to her breathe. Elara came around the bench, the floorboards sighing softly beneath her boots. I was just about to put the kettle on, she said. It's cold tonight. Stay for tea? His eyes moved to the kettle, then back to the coin gleaming faintly on the wood. How much? Something in her chest ached softly for this proud, strange creature who thought every ounce of warmth had to be earned. It isn't for sale, she said. Then I can't accept it. Why not? Because, he said, and his voice dropped, rustling like wind moving through a high canopy. A debt to a human is a heavy thing to carry, and I have nothing left worth trading. She didn't step back. She reached out, her fingers hovering just above the damp wool of his sleeve. What if it isn't a trade? What if I just don't want to drink my tea alone? He looked at her for a long moment, eyes wide, the rain beginning to patter gently against the glass roof above them. I'm bad at this, he admitted, so quietly it was almost lost beneath the rain, his composure slipping just enough to show the tired, lonely thing underneath. I don't know how to simply be somewhere. You start by sitting down, he said, her voice a low, easy murmur, and letting your hands get warm. She turned to him, room to breathe, setting the brass kettle on the stove, pulling down 2 clay mugs, spooning in dried chamomile and curls of apple peel. Behind her, wool rustled softly. Cal didn't leave. Slowly, carefully, like testing ice before trusting it, he pulled out the stool across from her and sat. She poured the water, and the scent of warm apple and herbs filled the small glass room like a health breath, finally letting go. She set a mug in front of him and settled onto the bench across the table. You don't have to explain the forest to me, she said gently, looking into her own cup. And you don't have to buy a flower every night just to be near the fire. If you're cold, you can simply come in. He wrapped his long fingers around the warm clay, not drinking yet, just letting the heat seep into his palms. Slowly his shoulders eased down, an inch, then another, releasing a tension he must have carried for years. I thought, he said barely above a whisper, that everything required a price. Not here. She reached across the table, closed his fingers gently back around the coin, and pushed it toward him. Keep your silver, Cal. He looked down at his closed hand, and then up at her, and the green in his eyes warmed, like sunset easing through thick summer leaves. Thank you, Elara. It wasn't a grand declaration, no vow beneath a full moon, no magic sealing the moment shut, just a small, quiet truth, spoken in a warm room while the rain kept falling outside. Beside them, a soft rustle broke the hush. The heart blossom in his terracotta pot was opening, petals of deep crimson and gold unfurling slowly, releasing a fragrance like honey and night air, filling the whole greenhouse with its blossom. Cal stared at it and then at her, and for the first time a small real smile touched the corner of his mouth. Look at that, she said softly, smiling back in the low golden light. Seems we were both telling the truth tonight. He took a slow sip of tea and leaned back against the wooden wall, the last of the forest's cold finally leaving his bones. Tell me about the star lilies, he said, settling in. I would like to listen. And in the small, quiet sanctuary of the greenhouse, with no debts owed and no bargain struck, the night rolled gently on. The end.